They took a 13-year-old autistic boy, abducted him from his own neighborhood and left him over 300 miles away in another state. Why? Because he was walking alone and the local HOA president, Miriam Blake, decided he was a threat. She invoked some buried clause in their private bylaws to justify what was, in truth, an unconscionable abuse of power. What she didn't know was that the boy's father, Ethan Granger, wasn't just any parent. He was the district attorney of Travis County, Texas, and he wasn't just going to bring his son home. He was going to bring their entire operation down. No parent should ever get that call. Not from a stranger. Not at dawn. Not to hear their autistic child has been found wandering, alone, confused, in a city he's never been to. Especially not when that city is in Arkansas. Especially not when that boy is sensitive, vulnerable, terrified. Especially not when the person answering the phone enforces justice for a living. At 7:23 a.m., Ethan's phone buzzed. He almost didn't pick up. He was half-dressed, bleary-eyed, sipping what remained of last night's coffee. The number flashed with an unfamiliar area code. Arkansas. He nearly dismissed it as a robocall. But something a prosecutor's instinct urged him to swipe. "Mr. Granger?" a tired male voice asked. Ethan's body tensed. "We found your son. Caleb." Time froze. Ethan didn't breathe, didn't blink. "He's safe," the man added quickly. "He's here in Fort Smith, Arkansas." Said he was taken. Said he was walking through his neighborhood in Texas when someone grabbed him. He told us, and I quote, "They said I wasn't allowed to walk alone and took me away for disobeying." Ethan's heart clenched. Fort Smith? 300 miles from their quiet street near Austin. From the sidewalks Caleb knew like the pattern on his favorite hoodie. From the maple trees he'd count when his nerves overwhelmed him. From the porch where, just last night, he'd said, "I just need a walk. I want to hear the trees." Ethan had kissed the top of his boy's head, ruffled his hoodie, and said, "Be back before dark." That was the last time he saw him. Now Caleb was in another state, found by strangers. Ethan didn't remember dropping the coffee, didn't hear the mug shatter. But the scalding pain on his foot confirmed it had happened. Who took him? Ethan's voice was low, lethal. The man hesitated. Some kind of private security. From a place called Silver Pines. Said something about a housing authority. Ethan's blood turned cold. Silver Pines. Their HOA. The board that believed they were gods of their gated kingdom. He gripped his phone until his knuckles paled. Caleb had been taken for walking. A neurodivergent child, harmless and gentle, restrained and discarded like an unwanted package. This wasn't a mistake. This was war. When Ethan and his wife, Natalie, arrived at the Child Services Shelter in Fort Smith, they didn't knock. They stormed through the glass doors like people breaking free of a fire. A woman at the front desk stood, startled, as Ethan said, "Caleb Granger." "Where's he?" A social worker guided them down a narrow hallway. It smelled of bleach and old carpet. Ethan barely heard the reassurances that Caleb had eaten, that he was quiet, that they were making him comfortable. Then the door opened. There he was. Caleb, sitting in a folding chair, knees hugged to his chest. Same hoodie. Same jeans. Sneakers now stiff with dried mud. His hair matted. His backpack unopened at his feet. For one dreadful moment, Caleb didn't recognize them. Then his eyes widened. He bolted. Into Ethan's arms. Then Natalie's. Then back to Ethan again, as if he couldn't decide where he felt safer, only that he needed them both. He clung to his father like he was afraid Ethan would vanish. He didn't speak at first. Just held on, trembling, fists balled into Ethan's shirt. Ethan knelt down, cupping his son's face. "You're okay," he whispered, though he didn't fully believe it himself. "I didn't hurt anyone," Caleb said, voice small, cracking. "They said I broke the rules. They said I wasn't allowed to walk alone." Ethan blinked. "What?" "I was going home," Caleb continued. "I knew the way. I always do." He spoke like he was repeating phrases someone else had fed him. Foreign phrases. Like rules written in code. Then his face changed. His lips trembled. And the tears came. "They put a bag over my head," he said. "I couldn't see. Couldn't breathe. I kept saying I lived there. But they said I didn't follow the policy." Ethan's blood froze. He glanced at Caleb's wrists. Their angry and red were marks. Circular abrasions. Plastic zip ties. Ethan turned his son's arm gently. The lines circled all the way around. Natalie gasped, tears streaming. They said I was a risk, Caleb muttered. Said people were scared. Ethan's heart didn't just beat, it ignited. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was sanctioned violence. A 13-year-old neurodivergent boy labeled a risk. Abducted. Restrained. Dumped in another state. Because he wanted to hear the trees. Ethan Granger wasn't just any father. He was a DA with 2 decades of experience. He knew policy. Knew how bureaucracies twisted rules to justify horror. And nothing about this felt accidental. That night, in his study, Ethan watched the footage from Silver Pine's front gate. Caleb walking quietly, hands in pockets. No aggression. Just a kid taking in the dusk. Then a man emerged. Gavin Marks. Fired from the county sheriff's office for misconduct. Now head of HOA security. Ethan had argued against his hiring. He should have fought harder. Marks blocked Caleb's path. No greeting. No warning. Seconds later, he restrained him. Zip ties. Then forced him into an unmarked white van. No plates. No ID. Ethan stared at the screen. Then at the HOA bylaws. Dozens of pages no one ever read. And there it was, section 8.7. Individuals who cause repeated concern or discomfort may be temporarily removed for the safety of the community. Handwritten notes in the margin. Loitering teens equals potential threat. Consider off-site relocation if non-compliant. It was a policy. It wasn't a one-time failure. It was protocol. Natalie stood in the doorway behind him. This is kidnapping, she whispered. Ethan closed the laptop. No, he said. This is an unlawful act of force against a minor with special needs. Under the color of authority. Without due process. It's a federal crime. He stood. They used policy like a weapon, he said. And now they're going to learn what happens when they bring weapons to my door. There was no hesitation. By 8 a.m. The next morning, 4 unmarked black SUVs rolled through Silver Pine's gates. 2 CPS vehicles followed. Agents in tactical vests swept through the community. Residents stood frozen, coffee mugs forgotten, phones raised. The HOA office, tucked behind ornamental hedges, looked like a miniature city hall. Inside, it was chaos. It took agents minutes to find the server room. Minutes more to unlock a closet stuffed with file cabinets. What they found changed everything. Folders. Hundreds. All labeled. Most in childish handwriting. Photos. Notes. Surveillance data. On children. Outside after 8 p.m. Doesn't respond to verbal commands. Walks alone frequently. Ethan arrived as the files were being cataloged. He picked up one, flipped it open. It wasn't just Caleb. There were dozens of kids. You profiled minors, Ethan said. Tracked them. Labeled them. Treated them like criminals. A federal agent stepped beside him. This isn't surveillance, he said. This is targeted harassment. And it's illegal. Gavin Marks was led out in cuffs. The smugness gone. Sweat beading his forehead. You kidnapped my son, Ethan said quietly. You crossed state lines. You used a system you helped create to justify it. That makes this premeditated. A CPS agent emerged, holding a folder. We found daily logs, she said. 3 years of notes. Even a draft titled Behavioral Protocol for HOA Minors. This wasn't a one-off. It was a machine. The media erupted. HOA kidnaps autistic boy. District attorney launches criminal case against HOA president. Surveillance of minors in private communities exposed. Protests began. At first a few. Then dozens. Then hundreds. Signs filled the sidewalks. My kid isn't a threat. This could have been us. HOA is not equal to law. On the 5th day, Miriam Blake, the HOA president, spoke. No apology. No compassion. Just cold protocol. She called Caleb's behavior suspicious. Called the abduction unfortunate but necessary. She used one word. Threat. The word spread like wildfire. A 13-year-old boy. A child. Called a threat. Not a neighbor. Not a human being. A threat. By week's end, Ethan filed charges. Criminal ones. State of Texas v. Miriam Blake, Gavin Marks, and John Does 1 to 5. Charges: kidnapping, unlawful restraint, transportation of a minor across state lines, abuse under color of law, conspiracy, and psychological harm. Ethan didn't hand the case off. He let it. In court, he stood not as a dia but as a father. "This is not just about my son," he said. "It's about unchecked power. About systems that forget the people they were built to protect. It's about every child treated like a problem for simply being themselves." Witnesses poured in. Parents with stories. Children with fears. Citations. Photos. Surveillance logs. The courtroom became an exorcism. The jury saw the truth. Miriam Blake, 11 years, no parole. Gavin Marks, 14 years federal time. The HOA dissolved. Bank accounts frozen. Contracts voided. Silver Pines gates were removed. The security shack demolished. The silence replaced by laughter, sidewalk chalk, and the sound of freedom. 3 days later, Ethan stood outside the courthouse with Caleb. "I'm not here as the DA," he said. "I'm here as a dad. And if you think your rules give you the right to hurt a child, I have news for you. I will come for you. Not because it's my job. Because it's who I am." The nation applauded. Not for the prosecutor. For the father. Caleb slowly began to return. A glance held longer. A laugh that didn't sound forced. Short walks around the block. Not alone. Never alone. One day he stopped by a line of maples, tilted his head, and closed his eyes. Ethan stood beside him. Caleb whispered something. He was listening. To the trees.